Iceland is known for its space and its beautiful rock formations. But what if these rocks could be put to use for the environment? Carbfix has come up with a solution that captures carbon dioxide and stores it below the surface in stones. Is this the future, and how does it work?
We capture CO2 from the power plant that is emitting the CO2, and we dissolve that CO2 in water and inject it into the ground, fairly deep into the ground, where within a few months, CO2 in the water reacts with metals in the rocks and forms carbonates. So it is, in simple terms, it turns into stone. So this is a kind of a safe and permanent and economical approach to storing permanently CO2 in a sustainable manner. And because of how economical it is and feasible, and it's been demonstrated now for 10 years of operations here in Iceland, and not least because of the huge potential of basaltic rock formations to store enormous amounts of CO2. That's why we believe this is a very significant and valid approach. It doesn't really matter to the Carbfix method where the CO2 comes from. Although we in this case take it from a geothermal power plant, it could come from any other source. So we are kind of agnostic towards the source of the CO2. But the capacity, theoretically, basaltic rocks in Iceland could store all of the emissions that are currently happening in the world. But that's of course just a theoretical example. We would never actually do that because of other considerations. But the area where we are now can store hundreds of millions of tons of CO2, and that is just one area. We have another site and another project being developed in Iceland, which also has the potential to store hundreds of millions of tons of CO2 permanently. So wherever you have favorable rock formations, and that is in many places around the globe, and you have the CO2 and the water to transport it into the underground, our technology could be applied.
You can see how this would be a new version, if you will, of offsetting, where people have planted trees to offset their carbon footprint. Could you just explain finally your ideas around ensuring that this isn't used as an excuse to continue generating carbon?
The whole discussion about carbon capture and storage, of course, has an element to it whereby we want to prevent the solution to become an excuse not to do other things which are also necessary. The reality is that we need all efforts. Reducing emissions is the number one priority and needs to remain the number one priority. But the most scenarios by the IPCC and others show us that the crisis has become so immediate and so large that that will not suffice. So the Carbfix mineralization method would be part of the necessary additional means to remove and store the emissions that are either unavoidable or historic, but only as an additional element.